Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first webinar for the Justice Reinvestment Program, the 2023-2025 program. This webinar will be focusing exclusively on the preliminary application, which is due May 25th. And my name is Ian Davidson, and I'm the Justice Reinvestment Program Manager. So before we get into the actual questions, we'll provide a brief program overview. Much of the material that I'll be presenting in the next few minutes is contained in the solicitation, which was sent out to you all last Tuesday and is also available on our website. So that's oregon.gov/CJC. Then you go ahead and click on Justice Reinvestment. That'll take you to the Justice Reinvestment Program page. So first, let's go over the purpose of the Justice Reinvestment Program. And me and other CJC staff will be referring to the Justice Reinvestment Program as JRP moving forward. That's the new acronym that we have as an agency have adopted to refer to the grant program. So that includes both the formula grant and the competitive grant, as well as the victim services, the evaluation pieces. All of those things we'll refer to as JRP. So if you hear me say JRP, that's the Justice Reinvestment Program. One of the purposes of the Justice Reinvestment Program, or JRP, is to provide funding for counties to plan, implement, and expand initiatives that establish a process to assess individuals and provide a continuum of community-based sanctions, services, and programs that are designed to. Then these next two bullet points will sound familiar to past applicants. They're the program goals, which are to reduce recidivism while protecting public safety and holding individuals accountable, and then reduce prison usage while protecting public safety and holding individuals accountable. And then another purpose of JRP is that it is a proactive approach to effectively spend resources in the state's criminal justice system. In terms of who can apply for this grant funding, the eligible applicants are our Oregon county governments, and they apply for this grant funding through their local public safety coordinating councils, through their LIPSICs. Now, an applicant can submit an application that is a multi-county application. So if two counties work closely together, maybe they have joint community corrections offices, or they have other synergies that really where it makes sense for them to apply jointly, they can apply on behalf of two or more counties. However, only one of those counties will be the actual applicant. And that's for practical reasons where you only want one application in a grant management system like ours. And so if that is something that you're interested in doing, please reach out to me. We can talk through that and make sure it's a good fit for you and other counties. So in order to be considered for JRP funding, applicants must address the 5 following items. Establish a process to assess population served, serve individuals charged with or convicted of property, drug, or driving offenses, consider and accept short-term transitional leave candidates as appropriate, provide assistance to clients enrolling in the Oregon Health Plan, and then work towards embedding equity throughout the county's criminal justice system. So as I mentioned at the top, this webinar will be covering only the preliminary application. However, I think it might be helpful to orient you to the different pieces of JRP, the Justice Reinvestment Program. So what we're talking about today is just this section here, which is due May 25th. That is the preliminary application. At a later date, an additional webinar will be hosted that will talk about these different pieces, which will all be due September 13th. In terms of the contents that's required in the preliminary application, it's these items here, and we'll go ahead and walk through each question in the application one by one in the grant management software to orient you and to help answer any questions you may have. And then again, at a later date, we'll talk about the items in the final application for the formula grant due September 17th. So here's a glimpse at the grant timeline. Again, this is information provided in the solicitation. For today's purposes, you really only need to look at these items here in white. The grayed out areas are for a future webinar and future discussion. So the preliminary application is due May 25th, and then the grant review committee will convene and review all the applications on June 28th. And then shortly after that, they will then provide feedback to you all, which will then go to inform your final applications, which are due September 13th. So before we get to the application questions themselves in the grant management software and SM Apply, are there any questions up to this point? Okay, sounds like no questions. Okay, so if you go to our grant management software website, SM Apply or SurveyMonkey Apply, you'll arrive to a page like this. If you already have a grant application or grant, an awarded grant, for example, you were previously funded the Justice Reinvestment Program or Specialty Court or Impacts, one of these things, your page will look a little bit different than this. In either event, you'll want to click here on programs in the top right-hand corner, and then you will have a list of programs to apply for. Because we are applying for the Justice Reinvestment Program for 23-25, we'll go ahead and click here, either more, apply. I've already started an application, so I'll go ahead and click see my application. And so what you are seeing here is what you will see as an applicant. And so we'll go ahead and take these items one by one. These tasks are all of the tasks that you will need to complete in order to submit your preliminary application. You'll notice here that there are some with parentheses that say optional. That indicates those are optional. So you, of course, need at least one program to submit for consideration. And some of you might submit 9, others may only submit 3, some of you may only submit 1. And so submit as many as you need, but those are optional beyond the first one. And then there's an optional bit here of additional letters of support, same with additional statements of commitment. The other pieces are required, however. So we'll go through those one by one. So start with the cover sheet, and I'll just orient you here. So here on the left-hand side are all those tasks again. So you can jump around. So this is different from past biennia. So this will hopefully be easier for you to put together and work on. So you need to select which county you're in. I'm selecting Marion County as an example. You need to identify who your local public safety coordinating council chair is. For my purposes, we've got John Smith in that chair. Now, in some cases, the chair of the LPSC might also have a different elected office, and they may have a title that they would prefer to be called by rather than chair, in which case you could designate that here. We asked for their email and phone number because if the grant review committee has feedback, we will address a letter to them. So we'd like to get their preferred title correctly and then have a correct email address to contact them with. And then here is the primary applicant contact. So that's the person who's going to be applying for the grant. And so maybe that is LPSC staff, a grant writer, somebody in your office, or maybe it's you, in which case identify the primary applicant contact. So that's who we as CJC staff will contact first if we have questions. They're typically the person who will be submitting the quarterly reports and semi-annual reports as those come due. So once I've filled this out here, I'll go ahead and click mark as complete. So, but before I do that, I want to note here that this is a half green because I have started it, but I haven't completed it. And then go ahead and notice what happens when I click mark as complete. Ta-da, the cover sheet is now done. And so you can go back in and edit it, individual tasks. However, once you click this submit button here, you'll actually have to ask for us to reopen it. So please, unless you are absolutely certain that your application is complete and ready to submit, don't click submit, but you can go ahead and click mark as complete. And then you get a little dopamine hit by seeing that check mark right there. So next section here is the consultation of data dashboards. Each of these questions refer you to one of our dashboards. So for right here, consult the prison usage dashboard. You click on it, it opens up to our dashboard, and then you go ahead and toggle to your state or to your county, excuse me, and then you'll see that, look at that, poke around a little bit, and then you'll provide an answer to this question. Now, with these first two questions, they are conditional, meaning that you only respond to the questions if you meet certain criteria. So in this case, for the prison usage, if your county has seen an increase in prison usage over the past 12 months, or if your prison usage is above your historic baseline, please identify local factors that may be contributing to the rise in prison usage. So I went ahead to start an answer there. Obviously, your answer will be different and unique to your county. We would strongly recommend that you answer these questions in a Word document. Grant management softwares, especially our grant management software, is sometimes finicky. Browsers are finicky. And so we don't want to be in a situation where you have written this long, comprehensive, wonderful answer and your browser crashes, or you accidentally click refresh without saving. And so to avoid snafus like that, please begin responding to your questions in a Word document. Attached to the solicitation, we have provided all of the questions, so you could copy those questions from that PDF, stick them in a Word document, and then you or a team of individuals from your county could begin answering those questions in that way. And then when you're ready with an answer that's complete, you can go ahead and copy and paste right here. And then, so for our purposes, we're going to pretend that this county only needs to answer the prison usage dashboard. Do that here. The recidivism dashboard, they took a look at it and it's not an applicable question. So they are skipping that entirely. They did consult the racial disparity tool and then began to answer that. Imagine here that there's a complete answer and then they're ready to go. Click mark as complete. And then our first grant program here. So we'll walk through one of these. So this is the Smart Sensing program for my imaginary county of Willamette. This program was previously funded by the grant. So this is a toggle question, yes, no. Yes, it was. What type of program is it? It's a downward departure program. As you can see here, there's a whole host of options here. If your county program doesn't fit one of these items, please let me know as soon as you can, and then we'll have a conversation and see if we can't include that as an option. We think this should include most everything, but if yours, it's a square peg and round hole kind of situation, please let us know and we'll see if we can find a solution. So then briefly describe the proposed program. So the Smart Sensing program is an evidence-based downward departure program that uses assessments for presumptive prison individuals charged with property, drug, or driving crimes. This is a collaborative program between the district attorney's office, the courts, and community justice. So here I'll plug something, which is please avoid acronyms as much as possible. Yes, me and other CJC staff will be reading this, and chances are we'll be able to figure out what the TCP is or what what a particular acronym might mean. But this document will not just be limited to CJC staff who may have familiarity with your existing programs. It goes to the grant review committee, and they have lives outside of what they do in that one day in reviewing those applications. And so on their nights and weekends when they're reviewing applications, the acronyms really hamper their ability to assess their program. So please, please, please avoid using acronyms or really insider baseball jargon. A lot of these individuals do have criminal justice experience. Many of them do it professionally, but not all of them do, or maybe they don't have familiarity with your particular section of the criminal justice world. And so you don't need to do very long run-on sentences that explain everything, but please be mindful of the audience as you answer these questions. So which of the goals of Justice Reinvestment Grant Program does this program meet? This one is a prison reduction program, so we'll go ahead and provide an answer here. It is also recidivism reduction program. So we'll go ahead and provide an answer here of how it briefly does that. And so again, this is conditional. So these answers only appeared because I checked these boxes. Now, for each program, at least one of those boxes should be checked, in which case you need to answer at least one of those questions, but it's specific to each grant program. So if you have a downward departure program, your answers are going to be different than your pretrial program, than your, reentry program. And so be mindful of that as you develop answers to these questions. Next, target population. So for this particular imaginary program, let's say it serves all of these gender identities. It serves all race and ethnicity. So you don't need to go through and checkbox all of them because there is this all category here. So in the only instance when you would check a specific race ethnicity category is if it's a culturally specific program. So for example, if it was a program geared towards BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color individuals, you could toggle all of these. Otherwise, maybe it's a culturally specific program for Black men, in which case you would toggle just this. And so in many cases, most of you have generalized programs, in which case you could just select all. If you have other historically underserved communities, let's say it's a community not listed, you would specify here. And then risk level, let's say that this program serves high and medium risk individuals, you would toggle that here. And then what kind of crime types does this program serve? Okay, well, this one serves property, drug, and driving. However, there are some exceptions. Let's say we don't consider UUV crimes. So not UUVs. So you know what? Acronyms. So you do consider driving crimes except for unlawful use of a vehicle. So you would indicate that there. Now, which assessments? And again, this is specific to that program. So let's say you do an initial assessment with the PSC, but then later on you do a LSCMI and a WARNA. You would toggle those things. If it's a pretrial program, it might use a different assessment. Maybe it uses the VPRE. Or if it's one that's focused on treatment, it might use a different assessment. And so if you use an assessment that is not listed here, please reach out. We can add that as a category, or if you'd rather not, you can click here, other, and provide that there. So briefly describe how the assessments are used. Here's an example, which I'm going to copy just to provide an answer. So kind of what we talked through, the PSC is an initial triaging tool, and then you use a more detailed assessment later on based on the gender of the individual. So has this program received a corrections program checklist or the George Mason University risk needs responsivity evaluation in the last 10 years? If yes, talk about when it was. Let's say it was 2020, and then talk about the outcome. Received X score, working on improvements. Next assessment is in June. So obviously you would probably use more words here, provide more information, but for our purposes, we're just providing this quick short answer to fill out that box. And then lastly, does this program provide culturally responsive services as defined in Senate Bill 1510 from 2022? And so here's that definition. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. And so if it does, toggle yes, and then briefly describe that. And so I think up above, so if it was serving a particular race and ethnicity or another historically underserved community, you'd want to toggle yes, but of course it extends beyond just those items that had checkboxes above. So for our purposes, we'll say no, then we'll mark as complete. And so maybe you have additional programs. For this webinar, we're going to assume that you only have one. We'll proceed to eligibility requirements. So does the county consider and accept short-term transitional leave candidates as appropriate? Yes. Does the county County or county partners provide assistance to clients enrolling in the Oregon Health Plan. Yes. Easy peasy for that eligibility requirement. Mark is complete. You get that dopamine hit. There's a checkbox there. We'll go ahead and proceed to planning and implementation. So talk about partnerships. So describe the collaborative partnerships in place that will support the county's performance and progress towards the goals of justice reinvestment. Here's a beginning response of a answer, which is our LIPSIC meets quarterly and has a robust system of subcommittees that meet on specific topics. The following are subcommittees that are currently meeting. You could talk about each of those subcommittees at that point. Obviously, your answer is not going to necessarily reflect what I just gave here as an example, but that is where you would answer that particular question. Input of historically underserved communities and partners. So how do you include the input of historically underserved communities and community partners? For Willamette County, they have an advisory group of current and past community corrections clients, and then additional context to that answer. So moving on to other sections of JRP. So how does the county intend to select which victim service provider in the community to award funds? So will the county run a competitive process? Yes. Okay, how will it do it? Let's provide an answer there. Okay, we're gonna release a request for proposals on April 30th. And then we'll ask that applications come in on a certain date. We are putting notice out to all known victim service providers and doing a public notice, whatever the particulars are, you would provide that answer here. Of course, if there's only one victim service provider in your county, you would select no. Evaluation plan. So does your LIPSIC intend to meet the evaluation portion of the proposal by remitting, meaning returning the funds to CJC for a statewide evaluation budget, or will you retain the funds to run a locally administered research study when possible and appropriate? So this county we're going to remit, although in any event, no additional information is needed because that application will be due in September. So this next question is new. So regardless of whether or not you intend to remit or retain the 3% funds, do you have a suggested research topic for the CJC to study? So maybe you have this wonderful research topic that you would like to have considered locally and maybe even statewide, but you really don't have the resources to conduct this study on your own. We want to hear about that. So you could put in a plug here for even just a rough idea of what that looks like. Our researchers may reach out to you to have a phone call to talk through maybe some of what that looks like, answer some questions to make sure that they have a good understanding of what you have in mind. And then ultimately, that may become a funded study in this biennium. But we're really hoping to get a good sense of, or a good pile of research topics to consider. And so what I'm suggesting is that that the CJC studied the impact of free bus passes on community corrections clients' successes in urban areas. So maybe the CJC will study that, maybe not. And lastly, the competitive grant. So this was previously known as the supplemental grant. And so are you interested in applying for that? Yes. So that's just to give us a heads up of how many counties are most likely applying. So go ahead and click mark as complete. And then here we have the letters of support. So this is I just uploaded a PDF that I had on my desktop here. So you need to submit a letter of support. This one is for the LIPSIC, the Local Public Safety Coordinating Council. You also have one that's required from your county's governing body, whether that's the county court or county board of commissioners. Upload that here. We are only accepting PDFs. And so if it was a Word document, please convert that to PDF. Otherwise, it will not attach. And then for the statements of commitment here, so these are different from letters of support, and because legally they're different. So based on Oregon administrative rule, and then also the rule was created as a result of law, which you can find here in this bill. The district attorney, presiding judge, and community corrections director, and any relevant stakeholders of the service or program for which the county is requesting funding must include a statement of commitment to the goals of justice reinvestment. And so, whereas a letter of support can be general, heck, it could even just be one sentence long. I support grant proposal. This one needs to specifically commit to the goals of justice reinvestment. We have developed some example statements of commitment. They'll look very similar. They are the ones that we used last year. Feel free to use them. Feel free to discard them. If your county stakeholders submitted these in the past and received positive feedback from the grant review committee, I don't think you necessarily need to recreate the wheel. We would, however, ask that you change the date and make sure that that is still the case for each of those stakeholders. So, and that's particularly true if you've had turnover in, for example, the prosecutor's office. If you have a new district attorney, that individual, of course, would need to submit a new statement of commitment. And so once all of these pieces are uploaded, you're done. So we'd encourage you to, once the required documents are uploaded, you'll have an option to click review. Please do take a look at that. Make sure you can review everything. Make sure you didn't like put in a filler answer that maybe said TBD or answer, or we'll fill this out later. And then once you've done a review, you go ahead and click submit, take a deep breath, and enjoy your day. At that point, you're done. So that is a very quick overview of the preliminary application, which is due May 25th. So I'll pause here to see if there's any questions.
Ian, quick question from Wasco County. This is Fritz Bachman. In the past, we had done the supplemental grant, couple of rounds of that for our downward departure program, and it's being called the competitive grant now. I think I had it in my mind that the competitive grant was something else at one point, but is the approach or the nature of that funding and the programs being funded, is that going to be about the same or going to be different in any way?
It's going to look very similar. So it is still a downward departure focused grant program. That has not changed. Some of the priorities of what is and isn't funded are changed a little bit. The priority will still be on personnel and then travel and training for those individual personnel. But some of the types of personnel, not all of the existing limitations from the past biennium will be the same. But yes, those personnel still have to be key personnel for a downward departure program.
Cool. Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Fritz.
Hey, Ian, I have one quick question for you.
Go for it, Jay.
Last year we had a program 416, and as part of 416, we had our downward departure kind of underneath that umbrella. This year we're actually separating the two. And so when we submit this to you and we say that this program was funded last time, but it's a slightly different name, is that going to be a problem for you?
No, if it really is only just a name change, you can flag that in there. But yeah, go ahead and check box existing grant program. No issues there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, Ian. It's everybody. It's Denise from Lane County. Just wanting to check. Morning. It seems like I will need a letter from my Board of County Commissioners, and last time that was part of the second part, so they had the budget, like the nitty gritty to look at. So I just wanted to confirm what you all are looking for them, that it's the commitment to the goals, it's the mix of programming and strategies we're using to affect those goals. Is that what really the intent is, since I won't have that budget ready for them?
So actually for the county commission, it is just, it's basically authorization to apply for the grant.
Oh, okay.
So they don't need to commit to the goals. They don't need to, get into the particulars of it. Of course, if they, a lot of people like to use flowery language, so it's not just a single sentence. they can go hog wild. But yeah.
Okay. I probably won't offer that up to them, but thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, and that's true also of the LIPSIC. So a lot of people just have the chair of their local public safety coordinating council submit a letter on their behalf of, but same kind of thing. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions. So this concludes what we had prepared for the webinar for the preliminary application. So as a reminder, the application, so the preliminary application is due May 25th, and then the grant review committee will be meeting June 28th to review those applications. And so if you have any questions, please do reach out. You have my email, you have my phone number. You can also reach out to Avery Sorensen, who's also working with me on JRP. But if nothing else, I'll maybe hang around for some last minute questions if anybody has them. But that concludes what we have for today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Well, I was going to take advantage if no one else had questions. But
Sure, go for it. Avery, do you mind pausing the recording or stopping the recording?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Avery.